Welcome back, everybody. Today we're taking a deep dive into a situation that's changing by the minute. Literally.
I know, right?
It's Israel's strikes on Iran, and there's just so much to unpack here.
Well, yeah. I mean, this could be a real turning point in the Israeli-Iranian conflict.
It really could be. And this all goes back to October 1st.
When Iran launched those missiles.
Right, after the death of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah. So weeks of debate in Israel, back and forth with the U.S.
And then bam.
Early Saturday morning, Israeli jets hitting targets inside Iran.
So we're going to try to make sense of it all right here, right now.
Yeah, it's a powder keg, for sure. So first, why did Israel decide to strike now? I mean, it's weeks after the initial attacks.
Well, they had to respond, right.
Mm-hmm.
But they had to be careful not to trigger a bigger conflict.
It's a tough balancing act.
Absolutely. Israel's security cabinet spent weeks debating this. It wasn't a snap decision.
You can imagine the arguments.
Oh, I'm sure. And they had to reassure the U.S. that they wouldn't hit, like, oil facilities or nuclear sites, just military targets.
And speaking of targets, the details are still pretty scarce, right?
Yeah. Israel's only saying they hit military targets.
But they're not saying which ones.
Yeah.
We do know one thing, though.
What's that?
They didn't touch the energy infrastructure.
Yeah. Sources are confirming that no strikes on oil facilities.
Which is interesting. I mean, can you imagine if global oil prices went through the roof right now?
Oh, it would be chaos. Total chaos.
So it seems like they wanted to hurt Iran's military, but not cause a global economic meltdown.
Makes sense, strategically.
But even without hitting oil, this was a huge event. Think about it. You're in Tehran. You wake up to the sound of explosions.
Yeah, and apparently the streets are filled with Revolutionary Guard.
There's a report from a resident who described exactly that. I mean, can you imagine the tension?
It's palpable.
And this is where things get really interesting, because this goes way beyond just Israel and Iran. You've got the U.S., for example, not directly involved in the strikes.
Right.
But come on, close coordination, intelligence sharing.
Absolutely. Netanyahu and Biden spoke God knows how many times.
Exactly. And you know what else? To show how much they've got Israel's back, the U.S. sent them a THAAD missile system.
Oh, wow, THAAD. That's some serious hardware.
It is. For those who don't know, it's like a super advanced anti-missile system. It can intercept, like, anything.
Short range, medium range, intermediate range ballistic missiles.
So basically, if Iran tries to retaliate...
The U.S. is saying, don't even think about it.
Wow. And as if things weren't tense enough, both Iran and Iraq have closed their airspace.
Oh, man. Can you imagine all those flights canceled, people stranded? It just adds to the feeling that anything can happen.
So here we are. Israel strikes Iranian military targets. The U.S. is backing them up, but not directly involved. The region is on edge. Where does it go from here?
That's the million-dollar question. To really understand what might happen next, we have to zoom out a bit. Look at the big picture.
Like the historical context of the whole Israeli-Iranian conflict.
Exactly. It's a complicated story, but it helps explain why things are so tense right now.
Okay, so let's untangle that story then. What do we need to know?
Well, one key element is something called the axis of resistance.
The axis of resistance. That sounds kind of ominous.
Yeah. Basically, it's this network of groups backed by Iran, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza. They all share a common goal.
And that is?
Resisting Israel. Some even want to see Israel wiped off the map.
So it's like another layer of complexity in this whole conflict.
Exactly. It means that even if things calm down between Iran and Israel, there's still potential for proxy wars to erupt.
So this is a lot bigger than just two countries, isn't it?
It is. And the situation is incredibly volatile. Any wrong move could have huge consequences. It's like one spark could set the whole region ablaze.
Wow. This is definitely a situation that needs close attention. Any move could have massive consequences. We'll have to keep our eyes peeled for any new developments.
It really makes you think, all this, the strikes, the U.S. getting involved, the axis of resistance, it just shows you how deep this whole Israeli-Iranian thing runs.
Yeah, this isn't just like a random event. There's a ton of history here. And I think we need to go back in time a bit to understand it all.
You're totally right. If we want to really get what's happening, we've got to understand how this rivalry, this feud has built up over decades, right? Clashes of ideas, strategic interests, and just this deep, deep mistrust.
So, rewind to the beginning. When did this all start?
This might surprise you, but before the 1979 revolution in Iran, they actually had decent relations, Iran and Israel.
Really? Really? I had no clue.
No, it's true.
Hmm.
But then the revolution happened. Everything changed. That new Islamic Republic, Ayatollah Khomeini, they saw Israel as this illegitimate state.
Like a Western puppet.
Yeah, and a threat to the Islamic world, like the big bad.
Ouch. I bet Israel didn't love that.
That's an understatement. Suddenly, they've got this powerful neighbor right on their doorstep, openly hostile and backing groups like Hezbollah who want to destroy them.
So, like, right from the start, this fundamental clash, their beliefs, their goals in the region, totally at odds.
Exactly. And, over the years, that clash played out in so many ways. Proxy wars, secret operations, assassinations, cyber attacks.
Always trying to one-up each other.
Oh, absolutely. And it feels like it's gotten even worse lately, don't you think?
Definitely. What's driving that?
I think it's a few things. In Iran, you've got the hardliners gaining more and more power, super suspicious of the West, and Israel is, like, their ultimate enemy.
And you're not afraid to use some pretty aggressive tactics.
Nope, not at all. And on the Israeli side, there's this real sense of urgency about Iran's nuclear program.
Right, because if Iran gets nukes...
Israel sees that as an existential threat, like game over.
They've said it pretty clearly, haven't they?
Oh yeah, they've drawn a line in the sand. They basically said they'll do whatever it takes to stop Iran from getting nuclear weapons. And that's where this whole current situation fits in.
So these strikes, this escalation, it's not just about what happened on October 1st.
No, it's about decades of animosity and distrust. It's like the latest chapter in a really, really long, messy story.
Okay, so we've got this deep-seated hatred, we've got the nuclear issue hanging over everything, and then the axis of resistance adding another layer of crazy. Where do we go from here? What might happen?
Well, one scenario, and it's a scary one, is that this turns into a much bigger war.
You mean like a regional war?
It's possible.
Right.
I mean, these strikes were a major escalation. Hard to see Iran just shrugging it off.
They already said they'll get revenge, right?
Yeah. The question is, what kind of revenge? Will they hit Israel directly, or will they use their proxies, go after softer targets?
So maybe Hezbollah in Lebanon launching rockets, or Hamas in Gaza stepping things up?
Exactly. And then how would Israel respond? Escalate even further. Hit more targets in Iran. It's a vicious cycle. Once it starts, it's hard to stop.
It's like everyone's holding their breath, waiting to see who blinks first. But is there anything in history, any similar situations that could give us clues?
Well, there are a couple episodes that come to mind. One is the tanker war back in the 80s. Iran and Iraq attacking each other's oil tankers in the Persian Gulf.
So this could become a naval conflict.
It's not out of the question. The Gulf is like the world's oil pipeline, and both Iran and Israel have a history of using their navies, flexing their muscles in the region.
And if oil shipments got disrupted, man, the global economy would be in a tailspin.
Oh, for sure. Prices would go through the roof.
Yeah.
Chaos. Nobody wants that.
Okay, so that's one possibility. What else?
Well, there's the Lebanon War in '82. Israel went into Lebanon to take out Palestinian militants who were attacking them.
So it's like these things can blow up really fast and drag in more players.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And once it gets to that point, it's anyone's guess how it ends. And then there's the whole issue of unintended consequences.
Right, even if nobody actually wants a full-blown war.
One wrong move, a miscalculation, and boom, a chain reaction that nobody can control.
It's a tightrope walk, isn't it? Each step forward feels riskier than the last. But you said this could be a turning point. Is there any chance, any way this could actually lead to something good?
I mean, it's a long shot, but yeah, it's possible. It sounds weird, but sometimes it takes a crisis to shake things up, to create an opportunity for change.
So maybe, just maybe, this could force everyone to rethink things, to find a new way forward with this Israeli-Iranian relationship.
It would be a huge shift, a massive change in thinking. They'd have to let go of all the old baggage, find some common ground.
That's a tall order, especially now.
No doubt. But hey, stranger things have happened, right?
So what should we be looking for? What are the signs that things are going in one direction or the other?
Well, keep an eye on how Iran responds. Do they do something measured, symbolic? Or do they go big, maybe something that risks escalating things further?
It'll tell us a lot. What else?
Watch the international community. Will other countries step in, try to cool things down, or will they just sit back and let it play out?
Feels like the whole world is holding its breath, waiting to see what happens. But no matter what, one thing's clear. The stakes are huge, and whatever happens is going to have consequences everywhere. Not just in the Middle East, but for all of us. So we've talked about the history, the motivations, what could happen next. But there's one more thing we need to factor in.
What's that?
Oil prices. It's crazy how even though Israel didn't hit any oil facilities in Iran,
Yeah.
Just the possibility of more fighting, more escalation is enough to, like, freak out the global energy market.
It's all about perception
Yeah.
sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Even the fear of disruption is enough to send those prices climbing.
Yeah, we saw it right after the news of the strikes broke. Oil jumped up almost instantly, even though there was no actual disruption to supply. It's wild.
It really shows how connected everything is.
Yeah.
Something happens on one side of the world, and you feel it at the gas pump, or at the grocery store.
Yeah, it's a domino effect for sure. So let's try to break it down. What are the specific things that could make oil prices go even higher in the coming days, weeks, months? Who knows?
Well, the big one is the potential for more fighting. If there's any sign this conflict could spread or that it could disrupt actual oil production or shipping in the Persian Gulf, prices are going to skyrocket. It's almost guaranteed.
And it's not just about direct attacks on oil facilities, right? You got to consider what Iran's allies might do, those groups they support.
Oh, absolutely. Hezbollah, Hamas, they've targeted energy infrastructure before. If they see a chance to hit back at Israel or its allies, they're going to take it.
So even if the fighting stays between Iran and Israel, there's still that risk of collateral damage.
Exactly. And then there's the big question mark. How does Iran retaliate? Will they do something that directly impacts oil, either production or shipping? That's the wild card that's got everyone on edge.
Okay, so a whole bunch of potential triggers, all pointing towards like super volatile oil prices. Not a good situation.
No, not at all. And you know what volatile oil prices mean?
What?
Higher costs for pretty much everything. Filling up your car, groceries, everything.
Ouch. So what can people do to prepare for this potential economic storm? Any tips?
Well, first thing is to just stay informed. The more you know about what's going on, the better decisions you can make.
Knowledge is power, right?
Definitely. And then there's some practical things, like if you haven't already, building up an emergency fund, a little financial cushion, can really help if prices start going crazy.
Yeah, good idea. Like having an umbrella when those unexpected financial downpours hit.
Exactly. And if you've got any travel plans that involve, planes, trains, automobiles, it might be smart to book them sooner rather than later. Prices are only going to go up.
And while we're at it, maybe this is a good time to think about those fuel-efficient options, right? Carpooling, public transport, biking, even walking. Small changes can add up.
I think the key here is we can't control the politics, the international tensions, but we can do things to prepare for the economic impact.
And it's amazing how connected everything is. Something starts with missiles in the Middle East, and it ends up affecting how much we pay for a loaf of bread.
It really does show that we live in a globalized world. What happens in one place can have very real consequences everywhere else. It's a reminder that we need to stay informed, stay engaged, and do what we can to make things better.
Well said. Well, we started this deep dive wondering why Israel decided to strike, what they were aiming for, and what it all means. We're still figuring some of that out, but we've definitely learned a lot about what's at stake here, not just for the Middle East, but for everyone.
The situation's still fluid, unpredictable. It's like the pieces on the chessboard have been scattered, and now we're all waiting to see what the next move is going to be.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Stay curious, stay informed, and keep exploring this crazy, complicated world we live in. Until next time.